John expected his readers to know Mary. When it was called, it says, invitations to Jewish weddings in the first century came in two parts. The first indicated the date. Recipients were expected to RSVP. Second invitation arrived when the food was ready and the festivities were about to begin. Now, this wine it talked about, and in a culture based on displaying honor and avoiding shame, running out of wine was a huge social blunder. They didn't drink water. There wasn't a lot of water in that desert area, and so wine was a big thing. Grapes apparently grew very well there, so wine was a big thing. Now, when we say wine, I've always asked the question, me and Wally talked about this one time, was it fermented or was it like a grape juice? What do you think, Wally?
Fermented.
You think it was fermented?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's what I think.
I think it was too. The reason I say that, let me say something before I go any further. The reason I say that.
They put her down wine bottles.
Well, you remember the Bible talks about putting wine in old bottles and in new bottles. Right. Well, the reason I say that was fermented, because my mom took grapes. Did you ever done that? Put them in a quart jar. And I don't know if she put sugar or what she puts in. I think sugar in it one day. Yeast. And she'd put them in her back bedroom under the bed. And she told me, she said, go back there and get you one of them jars. And I said, what is it? She says, grape juice. You could fuel a jet with that stuff. Wicked. You ever taste any of it? It's rough. I don't know how they drank that stuff. Anyway, it says such act could ruin the family's reputation and standing in the community. Further, the blunder could result in legal action. The bride's family could bring charges against the groom's family for not fulfilling their obligations and for shaming their daughter. Significantly, Mary's saying may indicate she was not directly involved in the situation. She may have been simply a guest at the wedding, though this seems unlikely. She was probably involved in it. Then what have I to do with thee, he said. Jesus' use of this phrase may indicate Mary had a more official role at the wedding. She may have been a family friend who was merely assisting with food, or she may have been responsible for catering the week-long festivities. If either of these was true, then running out of wine would have been a concern for Mary. Mary appears in only two scenes in John, here and at the cross. Jesus used the same term to address her at the cross. We talked about it a minute ago when he referred to her as woman. Behold thy son. Woman was not a title Jews commonly used when addressing their mothers. Yet, it was not a term of disrespect or contempt. It would be comparable to our saying, ma'am. And so that was just giving you some history on that. Now, Jesus' hour, talked about mine hour. That's that last part, mine hour has not yet come. Mine hour is a theme woven throughout John's gospel. The term refers to Jesus being glorified in his death, burial, and resurrection. His statement here meant this was not the time for him to reveal his full glory. In other words, he didn't want them to know. He didn't want to reveal this. That would come later. Yet, as we see in verse 11, this miracle did reveal his glory, meaning his divine power. So, I think he wanted to keep that, as we call it, on the down low. And that's what it was talking about. John 2:5-8. Go ahead, Debbie.
His mother saith unto the servants, whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. And there were set there 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of the purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. Jesus saith unto them, fill the water pots with water, and they filled them up to the brim. And he saith unto them, draw out now, and bear unto the governor of the feast, and they bare it.
What's a firkin?
What's a what?
A firkin?
That's a unit of measure.
I know.
8 pints.
8 pints? What do you think?
I think it was those pots that hold about 10 gallons.
Yeah, but it says that they held, it says each container 2 or 3, each containing 2 or 3 firkins.
Right. Did you get the amount?
I didn't. I didn't go back because I was busy looking some of this other stuff up.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
10 gallon.
Well, it tells in here, I did get some because it tells the size of the pot,
Yeah.
and it up to a whole lot, several gallons. That's pretty good. Pretty good. All right. Well, huh? That's a lot of wine to drink. There's a lot of people there. A lot of people. Now, we too are simply called to be servants who obey what Jesus calls us to do, even if it's simply filling jars of water. Whatever you're called.
That was new wine. What's the difference in new wine and old wine?
Stronger.
Which is stronger?
The older.
Is it?
You disagree?
I don't know. I never did aging. Always drunk it before.
Why does some of these wine bottles cost $1 million? It's because they're so old. Okay, let's move on. John says, whatsoever do it. This statement to the servants also indicates Mary was more than an observant guest. Do is an imperative, a command. The only way Mary would have had authority to give this directive would have been if she had an official role at the wedding. Otherwise, these servants would have had no compulsion to obey an order from a woman. They would have been answerable only to the member of the groom's family if Mary didn't have an official role. Mary's statement is a precursor to something Jesus taught his disciples. Ye are my friends, if ye do whatsoever I command you. The two verses use the same Greek word translated as whatsoever. John was making plain that the focus was not the wedding, the crisis, or even Mary. It was Jesus. This emphasis was put on Jesus. And it says these 6 water pots. These water pots, just to give us a little bit of insight here. The water was for Jewish purification. The wedding involved a wealthy family. Carved stone jars were much more expensive than clay or ceramic ones. Why would that be? One thing, labor intensive. But that's really not the whole reason.
Well, it takes time and know-how to make where they get it from, a rock jar.
Well, let me go into it. Let me explain to you what I read and what I followed up on a little bit here. Those clay pots, they bake them, make them hard. But that clay will eventually deteriorate. And it'll also crack. Those ones like you talked about, that labor-intensive stone, they don't break. They don't leak. That's why it's talked about this as a wealthy family, because they had stone jars, not clay jars. And that was the difference in it, because, this clay jars and things you get, if you bump them, they'll just break. They can break real easy. But now rocks don't break as easy, and that's what they was indicating on this. They wanted to bring that out about these water pots. Now, having 6, it says, talk about these, much more expensive. Having 6 was a display of abundant wealth. This was a large wedding. A small gathering would not need that much water purification. The family was obedient to Old Testament law, which stated clay jars were susceptible to contamination. Jews thus used stone jars to avoid the uncleanness also. They wouldn't contaminate as bad. This after the manner of the purification of Jews. So John included this detail for the benefit of his non-Jewish readers. They would not have known Jewish purification called for a person to wash their hands before and after eating, and the cups and pots, brazen vessels, and of tables that would have been used at a feast or religious observance. They washed, they cleaned. Water was dipped out of the jars and poured over hands and utensils for ceremonial cleansing. Jews in the first century took purification regulations seriously. Jewish teachings that had been gathered for hundreds of years were finally put into written form known as the Talmud, T-A-L-M-U-D. I hope I pronounced that right. The Talmud was 30 chapters of purifying various vessels and on cleaning one's hands. Apparently, they were really good about cleaning their hands, and I won't go into reason why on that, but anyway, there's a purpose. This 2 or 3 firkins just said that's about 20 or 30 gallons So you're getting close there, Sam. It said two. It says that there was, this is about 20 to 30 gallons. It said 2 or 3 firkins was about 20 to 30 gallons. This would not have been an excessively large amount for Jewish purification. Now, this at 20 to 30 gallons, each these 6 stone jars at Cana would have held a total of 120 to 180 gallons of water. That's a lot of water, a lot of wine, isn't it? A lot of wine. This would have been too large an amount of water for all the people and utensils that had to be cleaned. The task of filling the jars would not have been a simple one. It would have taken numerous trips to the spring or cistern that supplied the city's water, possibly taking hours rather than a few minutes. So the writer's trying to just give us an insight of how long it took to do this. It wasn't just somebody go out there and grab one and Jesus turned it to wine. It took a little while. And that's what that's trying to show us there. This governor says in the New Testament, this word appears only in this verse and the next. His role was something of a combination of master of ceremonies, chief steward, a head waiter. He was responsible for overseeing the servants and making sure everyone had plenty of food and drink. Part of his job was evidently to be the taste tester for anything served at the wedding. That's a bad job. What do you think?
Taste tester.
Taste tester.
Well, it's risky.
To say the least. It was risky. I've read some things about these guys. Well, you go in the Bible, there's some things about these taste testers that didn't work out too well, did it, Juanette?
Well, there's a purpose.
There's a purpose. You're expendable. So that's what that's all about. But this lesson just kind of gives us an overview of how this all come about and Jesus' role in this, and this being the first miracle, if you will. But let's move on. John 2, 9, 11. Okay, hold on just a minute. Go ahead.
This was a very wealthy family.
It indicated that.
Very wealthy. But Jesus came from a very poor family. It kind of makes you think now, how did these wealthy people invite such special people to this wedding? Does that make you wonder?
Well, it does a little bit, but I think that every move that Christ made, we think, well, that was just a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe there was a purpose. We have a purpose. Debbie, you might have to be might not even want to be there, but you'd be there. Why?
The Jewish people were very poor as a community. The whole nation were very poor.
Yep.
As a whole. A few people were very rich. So you have very rich, very poor.
And I think they wanted guests to come in too, so that's, yeah.
That, very wealthy would invite this poor family. Imagine how they were dressed and compared to everybody else.
Well,
Jesus was saying, my hour's not yet.
nope, not yet.
But in the fullness of time, he was sent.
And that's the rest of the story. Who used to say that? Paul Harvey. Now you know the rest of the story.
Page 3.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
Where it was talking about the Jewish wedding, it said everybody was invited, but to refuse was considered shameful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Poor, rich, it didn't make any difference. Everybody was invited. There was, you said it a minute ago. You hit it, but you didn't get it. Everybody wasn't rich. There was more poor than rich.
well, that's what I'm saying. It was a very poor nation because of the ravages of the Roman Empire.
And don't you imagine that was...
Good Jews and all the wealthy Jews dispersed them. They took them out.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that was a great thing for all those people, that especially, if you get something real fancy to eat, something really good to eat, and just enjoy it.
refuse coming to it. I mean, I went and
I know you would eat anything.
I didn't.
We've seen that with Charlie. Okay, go ahead.
When the ruler of the feast had tasted the water,
he's called the bridegroom, and saith unto him, every man at the beginning do set forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse. But thou hast kept the good wine until now. This begins of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifest forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him.
Now, as soon as reading that, remember they was talking about it. You brought the good wine. You saved the good wine for last. Why you reckon it was so much better? Did you hear what I said?
No.
Okay. Why you reckon he kept? Why you think he thought the good wine was last? It was the best.
When they get rid of the old wine, you don't want the old wine hanging there.
I just said that for a joke, Wally. All right, Jesus performed a miracle that points to his glory. Now, that was made wine. John did not clarify when the water became wine. This shows that the focus on the story was thus not on the when or the how, but on the by whom. By whom. Having servants reinforces two details mentioned above. The groom's family was wealthy, and this was a large wedding with many guests. The fact the servants knew, but the head waiter and groom did not know echoes a theme we see throughout the Gospels. The Messiah involved the least likely individuals in his kingdom's work. He got the least likely people. These people that filled these jars and these waiters. God revealed the truth to the least likely in their day. The good news of the gospel is that Jesus still does. He invites those deemed low life. This is what happened at this wedding. If you, like Wally was talking about a minute ago, these people come in from all over. They were invited. The more guests that was there, the more elaborate this wedding looks like. And so that's what this is talking about. Now, the good news of the gospel is that Jesus still does. He invites those deemed low life by society to participate in his kingdom. And that's could be referred to lower class people like me. I'm not rich. I'm not a big movie star, but yet he loves me. He loves you. He even loves Wally. And so, you know. But you see what I'm saying is that he calls us all. What did he say, Juanette? Whosoever, didn't he? Whosoever will call upon my name, I'll in no wise cast him out. What do you think, Mark? Got anything to add to that? Well, come on, spit it out. Come on, talk to us. Yeah.
Back in the first scriptures where Jesus said unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. Made me think about when Joseph and Mary went to the Passover and they were going back and they realized that Jesus wasn't with them.
Right.
He was teaching and listening in the temple. And when they found him, he said, How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business? And I think Mary, you think about that. When Mary said to Jesus, they had no wine, she knew what he could do.
Oh, yeah.
There was purpose behind,
That's what I mentioned in the first part of this, remember?
and Jesus was telling her, I've come to do my Father's business. But yet, when you look in Luke chapter 2, it says here that in verse 51, it says, after they were going back, it says, and he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject unto them. But his mother kept all these sayings in her heart. So he was telling her, I'm here to do my Father's business, but I'll do this for you.
Yeah. Not so many words.
Right.
Yeah.
And it never did say here, when the
you think as they was pouring the water in, it was turning to wine?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, we can.
To me, that tells me the vessels were the same, but what was inside was different. That's what Jesus does. He changes the inside. And the outside, I still look like old Mark. I didn't get no better looking,
Well, you didn't.
you know. But God made a difference on the inside of my heart.
And that's the way that's true. That's true. He makes it changes us. We might look the same, but he changes us. I mean, can you go back to a time when you wasn't?
And the taste is different.
The taste is different. Yeah. Well, the taste, and listen, and this lesson, and even in John's talking about, that when the governor tasted it, want to know why that they held the good wine back? Because this was, I call it that, this was perfection. This was perfect. This come from the Lord. This come from Him. So what does that tell you? It's perfection. One day, you'll be perfect. One day, you'll not have a heartache. You won't have a heart problem. You won't have a problem with diabetes or cancer will be defeated. These things is gone. One day. Some of us, it's coming a lot quicker. Getting old. Go ahead. Was you going to say something, Nick? Okay. I thought you'd give me the sign. But anyway, let's get, that's good. That's what I was talking about. It says, thou hast kept the good wine until now. The official's words indicate he was surprised at how good this new wine was. Underscoring the theme of these vessels, the quality of this wine exceeded his expectations. Now, I don't know what the difference is in wine, which tastes different. I've tasted wine. It's terrible. My doctor said after having these did they tell you to drink wine too? They told me to drink 4 ounces of wine every night. I said, well, you're crazy. I can't stand the taste of it. It's all taste. Did you ever taste of wine? Okay, I'll withdraw that statement. But anyway, I said all that because it is. But these guys, again, it goes back to what I said a while ago. They didn't have just to go to the sink and run water. Water was precious. And they made this wine from these grapes, and that fermented. But what Jesus made was what? It was like that. Perfect. And it was a miracle. People say, oh, just go ahead, Sam.
I think that ties right in with what Mark said.
Yeah.
You know, when we become a Christian, it happens like that.
Inside.
It took a long time to make wine. It took a long time to go get that water. But Jesus just speaks the word in the same way in our lives. When we trust Him, He changes us.
In the twinkling of an eye. Yep, just like that.
Go ahead, Nathan.
I think when they took the wine to the master to taste it, I always think of the scripture of taste and see that the Lord is good.
Yep. Good. It's good. And that's this. We can draw a lot from this and from these lessons that we talk about here. And this is good that we all talk. I love this where everybody can get together and talk. And don't be afraid to talk in this class because that's what it's all about, talking about it. But this talking about this wine, now he had no idea where this wine had come from. He credited the groom with keeping the better wine for later, and he goes on to talk about this. So who knew the source of this wine? Jesus, his disciples, and Mary knew. Finally, the servants knew. They had drawn water and poured it into these stone jars. Who didn't know? The guest. The head waiter didn't know. They had no idea. And when he tasted this, he thought that this had been fermenting for some time. So it talks about that. It says the head waiter didn't know. It says the wedding festivities continued uninterrupted thanks to the miracle Jesus performed. We keep the miracle, or why keep the miracle in the shadow and shrouded from public view? And again, I circled this because we've talked about this already. Jesus' hour had not yet come. Wally spoke it a minute ago. It wasn't time. He didn't want to draw that attention to himself yet. It says this beginning of miracles. This was not not the only miracle. It says this, the terminology lets us know this was not the only miracle Jesus would perform, and more specifically, not the only one in Cana. Jesus' miracles conveyed an unseen truth that pointed to the fact that he was the Word who had become flesh. In the beginning, 1 John, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was God. That's what the Bible tells us. Now, in the Old Testament, God's glory first dwelled in the tabernacle, later in the temple. Because of the incarnation, he dwelt among his people in a new way, in human form. Being God in the flesh, Jesus revealed and radiated the Father's glory. The Greek word is doxa, combined with logos. The Greek word for this, the doxology, is a word that glorifies God. His disciples believed. Near the end of his gospel, John stated that Jesus did many more signs besides the ones he had included. He explained, but these were all written that ye might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and through believing that ye might have life through his name. Whosoever shall call upon my name, he says, shall be saved. That's what he says. And that's what he means. Now, this it worked in these first disciples who were with him at the wedding in Cana. And he goes on to talk about it. Two of those with Jesus at the wedding were Andrew and an unnamed disciple. These two had been disciples of John the Baptist. Andrew's brother Peter was at the wedding. So were Philip and Nathanael. They were no longer disciples of someone else. They were his, in capital letters, his disciples. They had seen the remarkable sign at Cana. Even greater signs were yet to come. This was the beginning. This was the beginning. And
Is this when the disciples that were there really came to know that Jesus was?
well, that's what it said, that they believed, that they saw, they believed.
So
I think
until then, they didn't believe.
I think that they might, we sometimes I believe that's okay. But then you say, yes. In fact, this is true. What do you think, Mark? We see that. Sometimes we're hesitant. You think? You ever been hesitant?
I think this was the beginning of our belief.
Yeah.
They didn't know. They were converts from John the Baptist.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was just reading. That's when I was reading this.
So that's all they knew. They really didn't know the fullness of their being there until after he was crucified.
Let me ask you something.
Okay.
John 1:29. Behold, what John the Baptist? Behold the Lamb of God. Which do you think the disciples were standing there then? His disciples, John the Baptist's disciples. Behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world. What does behold mean? Look.
I don't know if John the Baptist ever really had much to do with Jesus before that time.
No.
They were cousins.
We've asked this questions before.
So, even when John the Baptist was in prison, he sent some of his followers to Jesus and, are you really the reason why I'm in prison? Because I'm going to be, excommunicated here. And that's
There's a lot of questions.
knowledge of these people really did not come to fullness until after he was crucified. And then
When he
they
rose.
began to establish the church.
Right. Well, now we're in the.
Back to wine. Can I?
Go ahead. Yeah, we got.
The significance.
You got 3 minutes.
Another part of the wine, he used this at the Last Supper. This cup
Mm-hmm.
and wine.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it? The significance of the New Testament.
Go ahead.
I'm
I'm letting you talk.
Use my 3 minutes.
You got all the time you need, brother.
No,
Well, I mean, we can get in.
I've started it.
We can get into a lot of discussion.
The wine symbol is very significant in this case, and I think Jesus at the Last Supper, it was wine. I believe that this was the drink of choice, and they used it, and it satisfied thirst, and
Well, it was the drink of choice and necessity.
Right, because Paul said, drink a little wine for your stomach's sake. That was to Timothy, and the water in the area was bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't very good, and so you had to drink something for liquor.
Well, the whole lesson,
So that was a sign of his glory to make, you know, it follows up everything that there is very significant. From the disciples being there to the servants to the whole process of the wedding, even the wedding, the future wedding to occur.
this lesson has got a lot of emphasis on the wedding and on the wine and on.
Jesus is united
Yep.
with the church and the
Yep.
wedding feast, with God presenting the church and to Jesus. And, well, anyway.
Well, I know it's it.
My time is up.
No, your time's fine. Anybody else have anything to add? Sam? Mark? Anybody?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Could the feast, the people at the feast, be similar to members of the church?
Probably.
Part of the community, let's say?
Probably. These feasts, these weddings, they talked about these weddings lasting a week, 2, whatever. I don't think that the people came and stayed right there at that. I think they would go and come. What do you think, Sam?
It lasted a week.
Yeah, and I think people would just go and come and.
And I think, one thing we can take from it is the best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come.
The symbol is in the wedding.
Yeah.
That says that word, wedding.
Yeah.
And you can extrapolate that all the way to
When we turn to the back,
The
in
church.
Revelation, we see the marriage supper of the Lamb.
Yeah.
That's what Paul is talking about. That time when Jesus has all his bride together, all those that have.
That's going to be a big wedding.
That's going to be a big
That's going to be a big wedding.
celebration. And
I might drink a little wine there.
it'll be perfect.
Yes.
It won't intoxicate us.
No.
That's part of what the symbolism of this is the best is yet to come.
Yeah. And this lesson also tells us and shows us just how we think powerful or how awesome the Lord is. There's nothing beyond him. There's nothing out of his reach. He can do all things. All things. And that's what he's telling us. When we call on him, when we accept him. I've seen miracles happen. You've seen miracles happen. Some of us in here are walking miracles because we should have been dead.
our church is full of it.
Yes.
You spoke about one this morning where that lady that was healed.
You're talking about Shirley?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was maybe.
Well, no, not Shirley, the one in Florida.
Oh, yeah, that's a definite miracle. Sure. Shirley's is too. But that lady is something else. I mean, and Charlie knows. Charlie's been right there with it the whole time. She's great. She's a good person, isn't she? She used to bring us down there, that big Charlie, a sub that big. When they're up here in the wintertime. And, of course, Charlie'd eat half of it. But you know, she was just a great person. And when they found out she had cancer, and she started telling me about it, and she actually was pretty tearful about it. And I promised her that you people would pray for her, and that we would all pray for her. And we've lifted her up several times, haven't we, Sam? And she told me the other day, she said, I am cancer-free. And she said, I know who done it. It wasn't doctors. I said, well, that's great. That's what we want to hear. What we want to see. That's a miracle. It's miracles. We're about to run out of time here. I hope everybody can take a little something from this lesson. I'm not great at getting it out, but I do my best. And I just want you to keep praying for these names that we've talked about. Keep lifting these people up. You know, we could be in a hospital tomorrow ourselves, so just keep praying. Mark, dismiss us, would you please?